Did you know that your job as a parent is to be a covering for your children? Not just physical, but emotionally and spiritually? Did you know that your agreements to various things have a cause and effect? When you agree to a thing that causes harm to others, you invite harm into your own life as well. Do you remember the parable of the unmerciful servant in Matthew 18? His king had forgiven him of his debts, but when he was forgiven, he went and jailed his personal servant for not repaying him the debts owed to him. Do you recall what the king did with him? According to Matthew 18:34, his master turned him over to the jailers to torture him. Here's spiritual understanding. Being unmerciful and unforgiving opens the door for the jailers to torment you. And who are the jailers, you say? They're the demons, the evil spirits that take over because you left the door open. Welcome to the Gatekeepers table. Today, we're entering sacred ground, the spiritual covering of children, the danger of unrighteous agreement, and the urgent call to rebuild what's been torn. This isn't just a message, it's a warning, a blueprint, and an invitation to restoration. Parents as spiritual coverings. The role of parents aren't just guardians, they are spiritual coverings. They shield children from forces that seek to destroy identity, fracture destiny, and confuse divine calling. Let's look at a biblical thing. Adam and Eve were given stewardship before sin ever entered. That mantle has never been revoked. It's passed down through every parent who carries authority under God. The home is a spiritual gate, and parents hold the keys. When the covering fails, when parents abandon the mantle through strife, neglect, trauma, or spiritual ignorance, the covering tears. Children, especially those in formative years, are vulnerable to demonic footholds and generational patterns. Constant fighting opens doors. Trauma without healing invites attachments. Lack of prayer and intercession stars protection. I'm not saying these children deserve suffering. I'm saying they were uncovered when they should have been cloaked in spiritual armor. Let's talk about agreements as doorways. Here's the spiritual principle. Agreement is access. In the unseen realm, alignment creates atmosphere. When parents agree with bitterness, or when nations agree with greed or oppression, those spiritual contracts give permission to opposing forces. Example, the signing of the big beautiful bill prioritized wealth over mercy. It's not just policy, it's covenant. And covenant shifts spiritual climate. The tragedy at Camp Mystic. Those children lost their lives between the same day the House approved the bill and it was signed into law. The flood came swiftly, harshly, and unnaturally. In the middle of the night, parents who supported policies that stripped aid from poor families may have spiritually uncovered their own, unwittingly triggering this cosmic consequence. Like Sodom and Gomorrah, when covenant breaks down, the covering lifts from entire territories. This isn't blame, it's a sobering analysis of spiritual consequences. Let me offer one more piece. A flood that most people missed. On January 1st, the same day the House approved the Big Beautiful Bill, prioritizing wealth over compassion, a migrant detention center named Alligator Alcatraz opened its doors in the Everglades. Hours later, it flooded. Water breached its reinforced perimeter, exposing electrical hazards and soaking tents meant for children and families. This wasn't just poor planning, it was prophecy in motion. Two floods, one struck the elite and one exposed the oppression they authorized. While Camp Mystic rose on sacred Texas ground, Alligator Alcatraz drowned in swamp water, both echoing a warning from heaven. It's almost as if God was saying, no one is protected when mercy is removed. Not your children, not your walls, not your plans, because the moment we agree with injustice, we invite consequence. Not punishment, but exposure. So let's look at restoration after reckoning. If the covering has been torn by neglect, arrogance, or betrayal of divine stewardship, then the way forward is through intentional restoration. Scripture and prophetic tradition name these steps clearly. Repentance at the leadership level, not just private apology, but public repentance. A reversal of unrighteous decision making. Stop trying to find reason to blame others. We need to see repentance from the higher level. You can't just decide to just move past it like, oh, it's just a fluke. Sometimes it's not a fluke. We're just looking at the natural and not paying attention to the spiritual. Prophets in the olden days called kings to turn around, and God still calls leaders to lay down pride and honor the sacred. Restoration of compassion in policy. Compassion isn't optional, it's sacramental. Programs like SNAP, refugee aid, and shelter funding cover the vulnerable. Reinstituting them isn't just government work, it's spiritual correction. Intercession and community healing, prayer, lament, fasting, and prophetic gathering are spiritual technologies. They don't just comfort, they repair the atmosphere and reclaim ground that was been stolen by trauma or agreement. How about let's rebuild sacred stewardship? Parents, pastors, policymakers must step into new formation. Forgive boldly, tell the truth without fear, and refuse to let privilege insulate you from responsibility. Cover your children, cover your house, cover your community, because when the spiritual gates are unguarded, we invite what we cannot contain. Let's talk about some other real world echoes of unrighteous agreement. This isn't just spiritual theory. It's manifesting in economic, emotional, and familial collapse across the very communities that endorsed injustice. Farmers losing their land. Farmers who supported Trump are now watching their crops rot and their contracts vanish. Budget cuts have stalled federal aid, and the deportation of laborers have left fields unattended. What they once believed would protect them now devours their yields. How about immigrant wives torn from homes? Americans who cheered aggressive immigration policies are now facing heartbreak. Wives and mothers legally married to citizens are being detained and deported. Families who once felt secure now sit in ICE waiting rooms, questioning the very policies they applauded. It don't stop there. How about corporations crumbling under the reversal? Target, once a DEI leader, scaled back inclusion efforts after pressure from Trump's executive actions. The public backlash was severe. Boycotts exploded, lawsuits followed, the stock crashed, and 15.7 billion in value disappeared. Other companies like Walmart, T-Mobile, McDonald's are walking the same tightrope. Spiritual patterns is not coincidence. This is more than fiscal failure. It's exposure. When agreements are made without mercy, when power is pursued at the cost of compassion, the spiritual covering over systems begin to rot. God said, if you do unto the least of these, and now it's if he's saying, I will not be mocked. What if this flood, these losses aren't random? What if they are unraveling of unrighteous agreements? Think on this for a while. Let this not be a commentary. Let it be a call. If this message pierced something in you, it's because you're a gatekeeper too. Rebuild the wall, restore the altar, protect the covering. Because if you do it unto the least of these, you do it unto him. Thank you very much for joining me today for this episode of the Gatekeepers Table. This one was a hard thing because lives have been lost and more lives are going to be lost due to policies that never should have been put in place. I wish you well. Bless you and your family. Until next time.